thanks for having me. I hope you take it easy on me because it's my first talk, so I'm a little nervous. Yeah, I'm here to talk about task runners. Basically, their purpose, what they can do for you, and we're going to run through a little demo at the end before Alex takes over things a little bit more depth. So yeah, task runners, basically it's all about front-end automation. So kind of like, you know, getting our CSS ready for deployment, production, that kind of thing. Make sure our assets are as small as possible. So why do we need that in the web today? Just because the web is evolving. There's more onus on us as developers to make sure that our processes are in line with the demands of our market. So we have the growth of mobile. A lot more people are using, obviously, accessing data on their mobiles. So we need to make sure that our assets are small, performance is improved. Performance as well on desktop. We're always looking to make things faster, less bandwidth heavy. The bleeding edge, we all like to be on the bleeding edge with the latest CSS properties and what have you. The automation can help us with that, which we'll come to later. Compatibility as well for all the browsers. Whilst we like to be on the bleeding edge, we also have to remain wary of all the browsers, such as IE. So, why would you want to use a front-end automation tool? Why should you move away from what you do currently? There's a couple of reasons really. Your current processes are laborious, so you're spending time doing things which can be automated. Why spend that time on those when they can be spent elsewhere? Inefficient. Humans are inefficient in mundane things. We're pretty poor in that respect. Lack of control. We're relying on a lot of third-party resources. You might minify your CSS one way. You might compress your assets another way. You're not in control of that, you're relying on other resources to do that. Humans suck at boring tasks. We are pretty terrible at doing boring things that we don't want to do. So going off to some website and minified CSS is probably a boring thing. So why use that? And our robot robots are actually awesome at those tasks, those mundane tasks. So we should embrace them and let them take over. That's the first of many gifts. So I've covered a couple of things on automation, but what are the main benefits of using some front-end automation? Saves you time and effort. If you can set up so all your build processes are run with one command, you've saved a whole bunch of time there. And again, it's time you can be better spent on the actual product or the project. Consistency. Again, we know that this robot is just going to do the job it's told to do. We're putting the values and it's going to give us back what we're expecting. That is something that we might get sloppy over time with humans. They might get, because it's a mundane task, they might get bored, the standards will drop. Maintainable as well, because you're in charge of your build process, you are actually able to write exactly how you want it, add to it, remove from it, and also it's important as well because if you're in a team, you're able to deploy that build process to everybody, so everybody's on the same standard. And basically, we always know that the processes are going to be run if it's automated. So, for example, like I said before, mundane tasks, we might just forget to do them one time, and you've deployed non-production CSS to your production build, and that's a problem. So at least we know the automation that they're always run, they're always done. If you want to introduce automation into your front-end skills, but pretty much go super saiyan like Michael Jordan right there, so yeah, you should definitely start using them. So we've covered why you should start using them, but we haven't actually looked at what they actually are yet. So here's a brief quote really. Task runners are a set of tools to make build operation clean and well documented. They provide helpers to manage operations on the project file system via the command line. Now, some front-end developers are, I know some front-end developers who are still a little wary of the command line. That's one thing with this automation that we have to get over that fear and embrace it, because it's really there to help us. But we'll come to that in a bit. Just jump ahead myself there. So what can actually these front-end automation tools actually do for us? What kind of processes can they carry out? There's a huge number of things. Probably the most popular one would be pre-processing. So all of your SAS, less, if you're a CoffeeScript, all that can be compiled in CSS and JavaScript. Concatenating unified files. So again, if you have multiple CSS sources, we can concatenate them into one CSS file. Also minify them ready for production. Auto prefix CSS. Like I said before, with the bleeding edge, obviously there's a lot of vendor prefixes on the newer CSS properties. There are tasks, there are plugins for these front-end tools that will actually auto-prefix our CSS for us, so we can create a task to do that. Asset compression, again, talking about performance, we want to make sure our images, fonts, etc. are as compressed and as small as possible for performance reasons. File linting and hinting as well is important. We want to maintain good readable code, especially if you're in a team. So we should adhere to standards there. That automation can actually make sure that the files adhere to a certain standard that you define. And live reloading as well is something useful. So whenever you make a change in the file, the task runner can actually reload the page for you after it's been watching those files. So we know what the task runners can do. There's a few options out there. We're just going to look at them briefly before Alex actually takes a more in-depth look afterwards. But we have three key plays I'm going to touch on. We have Grunt, Gulp, and probably the lesser known Broccoli. As you can see, Grunt has been around the longest and it's probably the most popular generally in terms of usage and actual number of plugins available. Gulp is newer, probably is newer, and they have less plugins and less community involvement, but Gulp is definitely probably a fan favourite for most people in the front-end community, and that's the one that me and Alex are going to be covering mostly today. We'll get up to why I prefer that in a bit. So, talking about Gulp, why Gulp? So their plugins are actually smaller and more efficient when compared to Grunt. Grunt, some of their plugins you'll actually find will do multiple tasks. That's not what you want. If you want a plugin to actually just do one job, then Gulp is for you. If you were to use Grunt, you might get a bit of bloat, which we don't want in this instance. Built-in file watching functionality. This is automatically part of Gulp, whereas Grunt requires an extra plugin for that. This is a personal preference, obviously depends what you're used to, but I prefer Gulp's JavaScript syntax in the Gulp file, rather than Grunt's more like a JSON object. It's just my preference. I actually think it looks a little neater as well in comparison. And Gulp as well is streams, which I don't know a great deal about, but I know Alex is going to cover that, but that is the main selling point of Gulp and why you should use it over something like Grunt. So we can look at some common tasks that we're actually going to cover in the example I've got. So as I mentioned before, we can compile Sass. You can prefix your Sass properties into your CSS, and also minify CSS. So essentially those three there are going to create production-ready CSS for you from your Sass files. So before we can actually get started with an example, we need to have Gulp installed on the system. So there's only actually one dependency for Gulp, and that's Node.js. npm is packaged with Node, so when you do the brew command, or whether you install the Node via the package download, you'll get npm as well. So we install Node on the command line, and then we're also able to install Gulp pretty easily. We actually need to add Gulp to our project, or to a new project, as a package. So we're actually going to download the Node module package, Gulp, and save it to our package JSON, again in the command line. So we need a Grunt, sorry, not a Grunt file, a Gulp file, which is where we can actually do all the work and define our tasks, and where all the heavy lifting is going to be done, really. We'll come back to that in a bit, but we must include Gulp, which declare the variable and actually require the package to be used, and that'll be referenced throughout the Gulp file. So as I said, we're going to actually touch on an example with those three plugins. You need to install these packages again in our project. So once a new project directory on the command line, we can use those commands, and we're going to get the Gulp Sass, Gulp log prefix, and the minified CSS packages in our project. Once they're in the project, then we can actually use them in our Gulp file, just like Gulp. We need to reference them. That means we can use them throughout the Gulp file to define our tasks. So this is the actual task. This is what a task would look like in the Gulp file. You can have many of these, as many as you want, really. This is one that's purely for creating production CSS. So we're going to have to actually just run through it a bit. The Gulp task there is a function which we're going to pass in a parameter, which in this case is the styles. That's the name of the task that we're actually going to reference later on in the Gulp file. So the task itself takes another array, it can be, of files. So what we're actually going to do there, I've specified one object in the array for a directory scss /**.scss. So that means that it's going to actually use all .scss files in that directory for this task. And then beneath that, we have something called pipe. Now, again, Alex will touch on those in more depth. So, if you could think about it visually, we have kind of one big tube. Our source files are kind of sucked up the tube, and at each station, they're kind of taken out at the pipe. That task is ran, and then they're kind of thrown back in the pipe, go to the next station, and so on. So each of these pipes is kind of like a stop for our source files, and then we get to the last one. So as you can see there, we're running the Sass plugin which we defined earlier on. So that's just going to compile our Sass into CSS. The next one is going to add auto prefix. You'll see that's a function that actually takes a parameter. Cool thing about auto prefix is is that it actually references can I use .com. So you can pass in a certain version, range of versions or browsers that you might need to support. Based on the grids and tables on can I use, it will prefix your properties depending on whether they're required for those browsers. So once it's run the auto prefix, it's actually going to minify the CSS. And then the one after that is actually what it's just spitting out. So the gulp.dest is the destination, and that's the CSS directory in our project. Now that can be run simply in the command line, one line right there, and that'll do all of that for you. So again, we're going to compile our SAS, auto prefix the properties, minify, and output the CSS into our specified directory just by typing gulp styles. So as you can see, that's the actual name of the task that's defined at the top. So, as I just showed in our last example, we had to write Gulp styles to actually run that task. Now Gulp has its a default task which we can use. In this instance, we only actually have to type Gulp to run it. Now you'll notice in the function I'm passing an array there. Now in this instance, we've only actually defined one task in our Gulp file currently, and that's the styles task. So I've passed that in there. And that simply means that the default task will then run the styles task for us. But because it's an array, we can actually pass multiple tasks in. So we can run the styles task for our CSS, and we can also run the JS task for our JavaScript, CoffeeScript, or whatever your flavor is. And that can be built with one word in the command line, because it's using the built-in default task. I also mentioned before that Gulp has built-in watch functionality. That's one of its advantages over Grunt. If you just notice, if we just take our default task there, where I passed in the styles task for us to run. If we just come back down here, it's actually a function, so we're going to pass in another one of Gulp's tasks, which is Gulp watch, and that's the function which will watch our CSS, our SCSS for us. So we're going to watch the SCSS the SCSS directory, any files in there, we're watching those. If there's any changes detected to those files by Gulp, then it will run the styles task that we defined previously. So basically, if I was to make any changes in any one of my SCSS files in that directory, then the styles task will run again. So it's essentially going to compile our CSS, minify it, and everything again automatically. So this is the final Gulp file for us to get to the stage of production CSS. So as we came first, we were actually creating variables for all our plugins. Obviously, the only one that is actually required in this instance is Gulp. The other three are obviously depending on what you're trying to do with Gulp. In this instance, we need them for the CSS. The next one is the task, which we defined with the name styles. And then the task beneath, which is default. And we're passing in the array of our tasks that we defined. So if we define other ones, for example, JavaScript in there, we could pass those into that default task, and that would be run. So a couple of things I would suggest, or some things I've learned whilst I was kind of going through this process myself. is really kind of tackle your most inefficient task first, essentially. That's the one that you waste the most time on doing, and that's the most important one for your process that you should look at automating first. Essentially, the whole point of this is to free up your time so you can better spend doing more important things, like writing product code or project code. Invest time in the build process. So that initial investment of time, it might take you 3 or 4 hours initially, but it's going to pay off in the long run when you save all that time. It'll pay you back. Obviously, if you were working in a team, that time saved will be multiplied, so it's important that this build process, you spend time on it and get it right for your needs. Again, just come back to the point I made earlier. I know some front-end devs who are not exactly savvy in the command line, but this is a good opportunity to get stuck in and learn the command line or terminal as well as Gulp. So take this opportunity to learn Gulp really and kind of get stuck in. That was it.